This developed over time. Gutenberg invents the printing press back in the 1500s, and now all of a sudden they don't have to write things by hand anymore. They can stamp them down and make multiple copies by having a printing press. Wow, that's huge. That changed the world. And then time goes on, then we get into electronic media, and you saw the history a couple of weeks ago with radio and television. Now all of a sudden it's electronic and it can go through the air. Wow, that's even better than getting on the back of a horse and taking it and having to distribute it to different farms or towns or whatever. And that changed the world. And so it goes. Then social media comes into its own in the 90s and early 2000s. Bang, that changed the world dramatically. So each one of these innovations really, really, really dramatically changes things. And in most cases, I think, for the better, right? Okay, so social media, like you guys said, okay, think of things like Twitter and, Facebook and LinkedIn. And who remembers MySpace? Anybody? Right? Kind of gone. I think it still exists, actually, but not that I know anyone who uses that.
Let's hear from them. If they were going to talk social media, what would be the ones that come off of their mouths first?
Okay, and that was going to be my question. I'm glad you brought that up, because I've got some examples up here, but that's certainly not exhaustive. First of all, which social media do you use? Just what do you prefer?
YouTube.
YouTube?
I use a lot of
Insta.
TikTok, I guess.
TikTok, okay.
I heard several
Reddit.
people saying Instagram.
Snapchat, Twitter.
Yes, Snapchat.
Twitter?
Discord.
Instagram?
Discord.
Reddit.
Snapchat, anyone use that?
Yes,
A
Snapchat.
lot of people use Reddit. Nobody really uses Tumblr anymore.
Yeah, Reddit is really, Reddit's a strange world. You gotta be careful at Reddit.
Reddit is its own thing. Like,
Yeah,
they
it's
have
a
like so
weird-
many
yeah.
different categories
I don't
of like
think
whatever you want
anyone
to find.
sane uses 4chan.
Well, you know what Reddit is like, and I'll tell you
Yeah.
what Reddit really, the way it started was, back in the early days of social media, just kind of point of interest, they had what they called bulletin boards. And then from bulletin boards, they had chat rooms, right? There still are chat rooms today, and that's what you tell young people to be careful, because in chat rooms, people will, obviously you can hide your identity, and you've got sexual predators and druggies and everything else who will prey on people in chat rooms and start a relationship, and you think it's a 14-year-old girl, and chat rooms can be used to catch criminals too, right? And so you've got some guy who's predatory, and he thinks he's chatting with a 16-year-old girl. Well, it's really the FBI, but they're good at disguising themselves and telling him what he wants to hear. And they have to be careful not to, entrap him, but if he leads them down a path, they'll follow, and then they can convict him. And that happens quite a bit, which is good. That's a good thing. But it's also a bad thing. Well, anyway, bulletin boards are what started out. And back in the day, to be able to get on the internet, you had to have an ISP, or an internet service provider. You still do. Most people have it through big cable companies or the big phone companies and the big providers, the Verizons and the AT&Ts of the world and so on. But back in the day, it was CompuServe. I don't even know if they still exist.
They have certifications. That's it.
Yeah, there
That's
were
a lot.
America Online, became AOL, which still does exist. It was sold yesterday, by the way. I don't know anybody who has an AOL address they still use, do you? It's on Gmail as far as that goes. But anyway, then there, on these platforms, what you could do is there were different bulletin boards. It was like a bulletin board, and you would type up a little message, and you put it on this bulletin board. You would type out this thing, and then other people could see it, and there would be kind of like Reddit is today in a way. And Reddit was one of the bulletin boards that kind of is still going. So it's weird. It's a different deal. Okay, so you mentioned, any that I missed. Anybody still use traditional media or mass media? Okay, so Mrs. Peterson, what's some
Radio.
traditional media you use?
Radio is my main.
Radio is your main one. What do you listen to, if I may ask?
660 and some Christian stations.
Okay, talk station, yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Television, constantly.
constantly. Cable or over the air?
Cable.
Cable, okay. Very good. Anybody else watch cable? Of course. I don't know if people do.
Yeah.
I don't really much anymore. I used to quite a bit, but you know, it's becoming a little less viewership as life goes on. Does anybody look or read or exposed even to a newspaper? Okay. Occasionally. Anyone, parents or anybody receive it at home, a newspaper? You guys do? We do. Not too many, and we realize that. I mean, as a kid, we used to deliver newspapers, and, I had 150 houses on my route, which was a pretty big route. And it took me a long time, and then you start at 4 in the morning, and, do your route, and then get ready and go to school and everything. Those days are gone. Now it's somebody in a car that drives down the street, and about every 8th or 10th house they're throwing the paper out, because it used to be boom, 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 everybody got the newspaper, because it was really the only way to get information or news. Parades or things socially in town that were going on. When is the fireworks going to happen? What time and where is the best place to see it? All that, just stuff that was useful stuff. Classified ads, want ads, like, hey, I got a car for sale, or, I need to buy, whatever. And see, it's really, really changed now. It's electronic and it's much more targeted. So you see like the logos up there for a couple of those. Okay, so these then are, we've got social media, mass media, and then see this little reliability test, if everybody can read that. Hopefully you can. And mass media are the check marks on the left, and then social media is check marks on the right. Can they both support a political agenda?
Yeah.
Yes, they can. What about uses misdirection? All the time on both, right? Repetition. The key to marketing is repetition, right? It's reach and frequency. And you'll hear those if you ever get into marketing. You people, you guys doing graphic design and stuff. Well, it's all part of the marketing machine. Reach is a number of people that see what you're trying to say. And frequency is the amount of exposure or the number of times they see it or hear it, right? Smearing. You think that happens? Every day, all the time. Appeals to fear. They both do. Which one's worse?
Social media.
Social media? How so? I mean, give an example.
Doxing, death threats, the amount of people that, sexual predators.
You gotta
Okay.
think of like all the, like usually it's like a place like Instagram or TikTok or something like that that explodes something to overwhelming heights, like rioting and.
Right, exactly. Okay, remember the riots last summer?
Yeah.
In Kenosha, Wisconsin, in Portland, Oregon, in Seattle, and various other, those were the biggest ones. But was that exposed to you on social media, traditional media, or both?
Social
None of the above.
Which one more so?
Social
Social
media.
media.
Yeah. Okay, can be held accountable for lying and other errors.
Yes.
Can social media be held accountable for what's on it?
In a way.
But see how nebulous it is, right? You can get canceled, right?
It depends
They
on
don't like your point of view, they can take your Twitter account.
Right. It depends on what service you're on.
Yeah.
Correct.
It also depends on what you did.
Because each one
Generally
has different
speaking,
terms and guidelines.
Are the people that control these platforms, are they accountable?
Yeah. It depends on what.
Okay, depends on what?
Like, you can't be, like, if you say something bad, like, the biggest thing I can think of is Instagram. Instagram, there are a bunch of accounts that there was, like, something a while back where a bunch of accounts would use specific hashtags and spam gore in it. And people would keep reporting these accounts and reporting them, and Instagram wouldn't take them down. So apparently it didn't violate their terms of service when it very much did.
Correct. So, can be held accountable for lying through commission or omission. Was Twitter held accountable in that case?
Instagram and.
Or, I'm sorry,
they were-
Instagram?
They
They were not, correct? See, they can't be held accountable. The reason they can't, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but in the Telecommunication Act of 1996, platforms on the internet, Section 203 says they are not responsible or liable for the content, and they have control over what's on their platforms. They control it. So if they ban the President of the United States from using their service, can they do that? Yes, they can, because they have an exemption from the FCC that we learned about, who came up with the Telecommunications Act, which was approved by Congress, by the way. And now there are proposals to change Section 203, or 302. I might have dyslexia on that one, but again, it's some government, you know, who knows the number, I can't remember, it's 203, I think. So that they are held accountable just like broadcast and mass media is held accountable. The broadcast has to reach a higher standard than newspapers do. Newspapers can print pretty much anything they want, and they're not regulated by the government. Interesting. But broadcast, whether it's radio, television, whatever, satellite, they have to. So the standards are not the same depending on the medium that you're on.
It probably depends on how many people use that service. Like, depending on how strict it is, depends on how many people